Hey everyone, and welcome to the crash course on high poly to low poly modeling methods. I'm just going to show you just the real basics of what it means to model something high poly, make a low poly for it, and then render out some normal maps and other textures, and then get into Unity. Just the whole process, just really simple. So let's get started. Number one, you're going to need to model a high poly. So in the game development world, we typically model everything high poly, depending on obviously the budget and scope of your project in studio. But let's say I'm a background artist and I'm going to be making some crazy piece of technology, some sort of, whatever, command console with tons of buttons and shit on there, or I'm making a fire hydrant and it's all like, old metal and tons of bolts and things like that. There's a lot of detail that goes into this stuff, and we're not going to paint all that stuff in Photoshop and try and make it look good just by hand. So we model the hell out of everything and then use some sweet technology to make it look really high poly but actually be really low poly. So let's just do a quick crash course. So I'm going to model a high poly. Let's do a couple things. So let's just start off with a sphere. So let's say we're making some sort of crazy high-tech drone-ish kind of thing, right? We got our sphere. So I'm not going to give a crap about how high poly this thing is, nothing at all. I'm going to open up my material editor with M, just throw some gray on there so it looks nice and sweet. So let's do some high poly stuff. So I'm going to select this, I'm going to select this vert, and hold Control and click on polygon to convert it to a polygon thing. I'm going to hit grow to select some other stuff. I'm going to extrude this inwards. Scale this shit down, inset, alright, maybe move this down, extrude this outwards, scale, alright, some sort of inset, so I'm going to double click on these edges to select them all. I'm going to use my chamfer modifier to just chamfer this up a little. I right click to get it back to 0, and then I can select some settings. I can put some edges in there. Bam, look at this crazy high poly sphere, is looking crazy already. On the other side, maybe I take, do the same thing, right, select this, grow, but now maybe I'll select a few of these guys. Again, I don't know what the hell I'm modeling, this is just for tutorial sakes, and then maybe we take like a bunch of these. There you go, that's maybe not centered. Yeah, more or less. Cool, so let's do that, and then I'm going to take this, I'm going to hit extrude. Now switch this to local group and extrude it inwards. And I'm going to use my inset to inset that a little bit. Oh, I hate it when inset freaks out. And just a little edge like that. And use extrude again to extrude that back out. And use outline to scale it down a little bit. Again, quick and dirty. Not very good modeling, but whatever, looks fine. Now I'm going to double click all these guys, select all my edges, because I want them to look high poly. I need some high poly edges on there. So let's just go through here, make sure all my top and bottom edges are selected. This is going to do some ugly mesh stuff, and we'll talk about clean meshes later on, but right now this is quick and dirty high poly, low poly modeling, so not worried too much about cleanliness. That's okay for now. Alright, so we got that. Let's just chamfer the shit out of these guys too. We're gonna get some really weird edges there, but that's fine. Bam! We got our... Oh, that did some ugly stuff. We have our high poly mesh here. Maybe I'll throw a turbo smooth on there. Oh yeah, look at that. Super ugly. Whatever. Did some weird corners there. It doesn't really matter. Again. Whatever. So... we have all this. Let's say we wanted to add some bolts on this thing or something like that too. We can, right? So let's just make another cylinder. Go in here. I'm gonna, bam. I use my quick align tool. I'm gonna click and hold on this align with the lightning bolt and align it so it's nicely centered. Go to my front viewport. I'm gonna save this file. High poly. Alright, I'll show you a little trick here I use for just aligning certain things. So I align this quickly, and I make a little bolt for this thing. Oh, should have lowered the poly count on that. I'm just gonna get rid of these for now because I hate working with really high poly stuff if it doesn't need to be high poly. So let's just, you know, shrink this down, scale it in a little bit. Let's explain why in a few seconds. Extrude in, scale, extrude out, scale, inset, extrude in, scale. So I'm just making some whatever weird ass bolt. Now if you notice, I've been scaling all of my, whenever I extrude something inwards, I always scale it. Same with this, you notice all this stuff is on an angle. The reason for that is let's take a look at how normal maps work. So this is just a little example. So let's say this is my surface that I'm going to be capturing. So I have all these details, right? And then I can extrude this, right? Whatever. So, all right, there we go. So let's say this was my high poly thing, right? It's all crazy high poly, but I just want this to be a single plane. What we're going to do is we're going to use a plane to capture all this detail. But since all this stuff is 45-degree angles, when we look at it from the top to actually capture this, if we turn off our lighting, it just looks flat. So imagine doing something like, you know, like a photo just from the top, and you're trying to understand the height differences in these things just from a photo. You're not going to understand what's happening. So what we do is when we do normal maps, we got to make sure that we do everything on an angle, even if it doesn't actually make sense of why that mesh would be on an angle. Alright, so you try and do as 45 as you can. Doesn't have to be, but it will capture a lot nicer if it's a decent edge. So even though, let's say these are metal whatevers, you know, they wouldn't actually maybe build them like this in real life, but when we capture it from the top, you'll see now we can actually see all this detail. And that's exactly how normal maps capture. They kind of look at things from the top, and if there's no actual edges and differences, they won't know what to kind of capture. So I'll explain that a little better as we go on, but just so you know, when you're modeling your high poly stuff, always try and get your stuff as angular as possible. It'll just look nice, it'll capture better, and all that jazz. So I'm going to go through here. I'm just going to select all of my edges here. I'm going to chamfer them all just a little bit. Actually, let's open up the chamfer dialog so I could add a couple edges. Even this little inside guy. Just going to do that. And I'm going to delete my bottom edge, or my bottom face under here, because I don't need it. And I can turbo smooth this thing too if I just wanted to make it really nice and shiny. I'm going to throw gray material on there. Gray material is just for me to have everything look all nice. It's not for any actual purpose. So let's say I wanted to take this this little nubbin here and just put it along some of these edges here. That's a really ugly mesh. I apologize if anyone's watching that actually cares about modeling. This is awful. So I can take this thing, I can duplicate it, and then I can try and like rotate it by hand and try and place it over there. Terrible idea. It'd be awful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this little nipple button thing here. I'm going to go to my hierarchy panel. I'm going to go to Effect Pivot Only. And with this on, I'm no longer moving the mesh, I'm moving its pivot point. And so what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to have it in the center of the sphere, so when I rotate around, it's going to just rotate right on top of this sphere. Now I'm not going to eyeball it. I'm going to have this Effect Pivot Only selected. I'm going to select my Quick Align again. I'm going to click the sphere. And it's going to align my pivot of this nipple thing to my sphere. I can convert to editable poly or just get out of there. And now when I rotate, it stays nicely on the surface off of that because it's rotating off of that pivot. So now I can shift drag and you know, move it along here. Right. There we go. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to attach these two together because I just want them over on this side. Oh, right. It's not the right distance apart. Never mind. Let me undo. I was going to eyeball this. Usually I would do this a lot nicer. But again, this is a quick and dirty modeling. You're just learning. You're learning how to high poly, low poly model. Don't be afraid if your models suck in the beginning. They're going to suck. It's not going to be good. You're going to learn how to get better and faster just by doing more models. So instead of trying to get things perfect the first time through, just spend some time and just make things. Don't worry about making them great. I'm going to take this top nipple, and I'm just going to scale it up so it's a little different than those guys. There you go. We got our high poly, whatever the hell this is. And it's finished. So I'm going to select this sphere. I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. I'm going to attach all my little pieces here. I want them all to be one asset. There we go. Looks nice. Save my file. Bam. High poly's done. Look at this shit. Way too high poly for a game. If this was like super tiny, if it was like the size of a player's, you know, up to his knees or something, you couldn't have like a whole crap ton of these around the level. It'd be way too much. So we're going to make a low poly out of this. So what we're going to do, because this is a really simple shape, I'm just going to make another sphere. And we'll talk about more complicated shapes in the next tutorial. So there we go. I'm going to make my sphere a little bigger. So you want your low poly just to be about the same size or a little bit bigger than your high poly. It's pretty good. Those guys are alright. Right? They can be outside. That's fine. So I'm going to name this low. I'm going to name this guy high. Always name your stuff just for your own sanity. Excuse me. So I use the align tool, by the way, to align these two together, if you didn't know. So there we go. We have that done. I'm going to open up my unwrap. Now this is my default unwrap for a sphere, which is not the worst. It's not great, especially where all of these guys are concerned. They're all just triangles. They're not going to look very nice. So what I might want to do is I might just want to select, element select. I might select just those guys here. You know, maybe right along that edge. Let's do plus. I'm just going to flat map this. Alright, maybe do that for the bottom bit too. Alright, maybe a little bit more. Boop. Like that. This is not the best. We'll talk about seams and things like that on a better tutorial. But for now, again, quick and dirty. This is just so you get the idea of what the hell's going on. Alright, so we got that. I'm going to hit mapping, flat map, bam. We got that. Now, when you're doing a custom map for something, everything needs to be in the square. I will do a unwrapping tutorial eventually as well. So check that out if it's already up there. So everything has to be in the square. We will start off just by hitting the sweet pack normalize button. Right? What the nice thing about this is it should scale your meshes to each other so they're all the same scale. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that nothing's touching the edges completely. Like this guy's like right up to the edge of this thing. I want it to be a little bit smaller. Oh, I hate it when Max does that too. I don't know if anybody else gets that. If it's just me, I gotta update my 3D Max anyways. Alright, there we go. More or less, right? Just so it's not touching the edge. Doesn't have to be a lot. These guys will be here. They, you know, they could be there. Bam! We have our unwrap. Convert that guy over. Alright, so we have our low poly. We have our high poly. We're ready to bake. So let's take this low poly. We're going to do this all in max. We're going to go to render. Render to texture. Bam. So what we're going to do is we're going to use projection mapping. We're going to have this guy selected, the low. I'm going to enable projection mapping. I'm going to click pick. I'm going to pick my high poly. And what it made for me right here is a cage. And what a cage does is it tries its best to encapsulate all of the high poly details. So you see kind of bulged out over these bolts and that guy there, and that's fine. This one actually looks pretty good. If you don't like it, you could always go into the cage settings here, hit reset, and then just expand it yourself, right? And just kind of try and do like a generic one here. Let's try, let's just try this generic one. I'm just going to make sure that it's fully over top of everything. This might work okay, maybe not. We'll see. Okay, so we have that ready. So basically what we're going to be doing is every single face of our low poly here is going to render a texture, if you want to imagine, from the point of view of this face. So this face is going to project downward and capture the details from there, this one from here, this one from there, and it's all going to do it from its own local kind of point of view. So let's see what happens with this big cage here. So this is all set up pretty well. Next we're going to actually need some textures to actually bake out. So down here we have our output. You're going to click Add. You're going to decide which type of textures that you're going to want. Right off the bat, we're going to want a normal map. And we'll probably want to do a lighting map eventually too. But for now, let's just do a normal map. So add element. Scroll down. You can choose what size you want. So let's do like a 1024. You decide where it goes. So I'll throw it on my desktop for now. Call it whatever. Lowe's normal map. That's fine. Alright, it's right there. I don't care about where it goes. You can pick the name of whatever it's called here. Sphere norm X. That'll be my thing. So I'm going to hit render. It's going to ask you, hey, you didn't like put a target slot. I don't care. It's going into Unity. So I'm just going to say, don't tell me ever again. And hit bake. And this is going to render out like the actual lighting information from my scene. I remember the first time I did this in 3D Max, I'm like, hey, where the shit is my normal map, dude? You just got to trust Max to throw the normal map on the desktop and not actually, don't worry about what it's doing here. So we're going to take our low poly, I'm just going to duplicate it over on the side here, collapse the projection modifier, open up my material, throw that material on there, and I'm not going to bother actually putting this in the normal map slot for now because it's 3D Max and I don't give a crap. Open up bitmap, go to my desktop. Alright, I called it sphere, whatever. Where are you? There you are. Low sphere X. I'll turn that on. Bam! So that's our normal map. It's all funky colors. Now, what these colors mean is when we put it inside a lighting engine, Max included if we rendered it and put it in the right channel, let's say in Unity, what this texture does is all it's doing is it's feeding this texture into the lighting engine, and it's telling what direction these slants are on. So you see it kind of gradually kind of changes colors. So it's like, hey, this pink color means that this is on an angle. So if there's lights coming from here, put them all on, you know, the slight pink side. And we'll see what that looks like in 3D Max. There we go. Nice low poly compared to our ridiculously high poly one that we had before. I'm going to take my low poly, I'm going to export it as an FBX. I'm just going to export it into my desktop. Sphere. Just an FBX, I don't need animations. Bam. Open up Unity, open up a brand new scene. Typically I would set up a proper project working folder. If you don't know Unity, bear with me, there will be Unity examples eventually too. I'm just going to open these guys up. Actually, let me just do desktop. So let's find my low sphere. So I got my low sphere diffuse. Oh, I did a diffuse map too. My X and my sphere FBX. I'm just going to drag both of these into my project folders right here. Drag my sphere into there. Now we put it into the albedo because that's what I had in Max, so I'm just going to take that out. Throw my sphere normal map into the normal map slot under the standard shader. This is Unity 5, by the way. It's going to look like shit because it's not set as normal map, so we're going to hit fix now, and it'll fix it. And look at this, look at that beauty. Look at that. It's as if it's all high poly and shit, but it's not. It's like a super low. Look at that. There's just planes going right across. Going right across there. But look at that. It looks like there's like nice clean edges because we chamfered the shit out of everything. Right? And now you can see what I'm talking about doing 45-degree angles for that because you actually need it. So if I select my sunlight here and I start rotating this thing, you'll see that it's actually, you know, those little edges here, they actually look like they're lighting from the proper angles. Actually, it kind of looks backwards right now. I might have flipped a texture coordinate when I baked that out. Possibly. Let's take a look at our normal map settings here. Normal map, set to normal map. It's not being created from grayscale. Okay, well, we'll talk about that next time. There's some weird things between engines about which direction things are coming from. But still, it looks pretty kick-ass for the most part. I can go in here, up my glossiness if I want to make it look really glossy, really metallic. There we go. So that's your quick and dirty run-in with normal maps. So we have, we took a very high poly mesh that was just nonsense, and we turned it into a fairly low poly mesh with some really nice details. And you know, that's all this stuff here. And all that. We got our bolts, we got our insets that actually look like they're inset. There's some really ugly looking stuff there because the model was garbage. But generally, you know, we got what we wanted. So hope that helps. Again, quick and dirty intro to normal maps. The next one, we will do some more in-depth looking at building some high poly stuff and getting some actual custom meshes, not just spheres as your low poly. And I'll do some unwrapping and all that kind of jazz. So hopefully that helps. Just kind of crash and burn through there. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and subscribe. Thanks, guys.